Mom said the dog was acting strange. The dog said the baby was in trouble. Saskia Vandenberg had been a pediatric emergency RN for 16 years. She had seen more than most parents ever would. She trusted that. She had built her whole approach to motherhood around what she knew, around what experience had taught her body to recognize in a beat. 10-month-old Yara had been the center of that approach since the morning she was born. Lichen was a 5-year-old Great Pyrenees who had shared the house since before Yara existed. He had never shown anything but patience with her. The ear-grabbing, the shrieking, the lurching of a child learning to walk. He was the kind of dog people describe as gentle, to the point of being a little dull. Which is why what happened that morning in their colonial in late October made no sense. It was the kind of week when nothing was supposed to happen. Yara had been mildly sick 4 days earlier, the kind of thing that moves through everyday care without alarm. By that morning she was eating soft food again, walking the fever long broken. By every measure Saskia knew she was getting better. It started in the den. Yara woke fussy, the way babies do when something is not quite right, but they cannot say what. Saskia fed her, changed her, held her. Within 20 minutes, Lichen was circling the hallway runner counterclockwise, repeatedly. Not threatening, not aggressive, just there, immovable, his attention locked on the child in a way it had never been before. Saskia watched from the tufted sofa, coffee in hand, and felt the first thread of unease. Lichen, go lie down. He lifted his eyes to her and stayed exactly where he was. Yara began to cry. He didn't back away. She set the coffee down. He was holding the position for 2 full seconds at a time, then pulling back to look at her, directly, flat on, then lowering his face again. He was reporting something. She would understand that later. In the moment, she only saw a Great Pyrenees too close to a crying toddler, and her body registered the size differential before her mind caught up. It happened again 20 minutes later. Yara had quieted, was sitting on the engineered oak with the knit teether, and Lichen crossed the den in the same deliberate way, and lowered his head again. Saskia pulled him back by the collar. He turned immediately and sat beside her, calm, composed, watching the child. She filed it as odd. She noted it. She did not yet understand that he was not asking for attention. He was filing his own report. In 16 years of work, Saskia had seen dogs upset children before. She had seen the pattern. Stress behavior, resource guarding, overstimulation around a crying infant. She had seen families dismiss warning signs until it was too late, and she had written notes about exactly the kind of fixation she was now watching unfold in her own den. The size differential alone, the weight of a large animal against the small body of a toddler, made her stomach tighten in a way she recognized as professional instinct. She crossed the room and put herself between them. Lichen moved around her. He wasn't growling, he wasn't stiff, but he would not leave Yara alone. Pieter came in from the next room and watched for 30 seconds. Should we put him out back? Saskia was already nodding. Just for a few hours, until she's calmer. Her mother-in-law, who had come to help that week, said it from the hallway without being asked. You're right, you can't take that risk with a baby. They had all reached the same conclusion. That felt, at the time, like confirmation. She had used the exact words she would have used in a clinical note. She had the training. She had the years. She had the framework that told her, with professional certainty, what she was watching. She did not yet know that the framework itself was the trap. The side garage entry clicked shut. Yara stopped crying almost immediately, which felt like proof. Saskia picked her up and held her, and felt the quiet of a problem solved. She set her down on the engineered oak near the burp cloth, and went to fold laundry in the next room, the infant scale on the counter beside her. Lichen was scratching at the side garage entry within 10 minutes. Not barking. Scratching. A continuous, focused, rhythmic scraping that did not stop. Pieter let him back in, more out of frustration than understanding. He went directly to the doorway of the room where Yara now lay, positioned himself at the threshold, and would not move. Saskia came to stand beside Pieter. She looked at Lichen standing over the sleeping baby. She looked at how still he was, how focused. He had never done this before. Not once. He's fixating on her, she said. Peter nodded slowly. They had both reached the same wrong conclusion in the same wrong way. Neither of them asked why he was starting now. They moved him to the back bedroom that night. Door closed. He scratched at it for 4 hours without stopping. Peter called his cousin about temporary boarding. Saskia did not argue. She had seen too much, she thought, to argue. She wrote in her journal that night, "I almost gave the dog away today." She underlined the word, almost. She did not know yet how much that underlining would matter. Yara woke at 2 a.m. Not crying. Small sounds. Not distressed. Saskia gave her 10 minutes on the infant scale. The sounds did not change. She turned over. At 3:29 in the morning, she heard Lichen hit the back bedroom door. Not scratching. Impact. The full weight of a grown dog throwing himself against the hollow corridor. Then again. Then again. She was moving before the thought finished. Down the hall, the door shaking in its frame. She grabbed the handle, and Lichen pushed past her before she could speak and ran. Not walked, directly to the room where Yara lay. Saskia followed. Lichen was at the crib, both paws on the rail, his nose pressed to the child's face. Yara was quiet, the wrong kind of quiet. Saskia reached in. The body in her hands was limp and warm and wrong. She turned on the light. The color in Yara's face was off. Not the gray she knew to fear, but a faint pallor around the lips. Hands slightly cool. Breathing even but shallow. She picked her up, and the limpness was too much. Just slightly too much, and she was already reaching for her phone before she finished forming the thought. Pietro came down the hall behind her in his socks. He took one look at the way she was holding the child, and did not ask any questions. He picked up the keys from the tufted sofa and opened the side garage entry. Lichen did not follow them out. He stood at the doorway, watching the car start in the driveway, his outline visible in the porch light, his weight leaning toward the gate, as if even now he was still trying to come. At the emergency clinic 40 minutes later, the readings came back. Chi levels exceeded 84 μ/L. The diagnosis was congenital hypothyroidism in newborn. The kind of slow, invisible slide that does not announce itself, that produces no dramatic symptom, that depletes a child without any external signal a parent would think to look for. The pediatric endocrinologist who admitted them was someone who specialized in newborn screening. She read the chart and looked up. This was being detected, she said, by something. Yara was not symptomatic to you yet. By the time a parent sees this, we are usually managing a crisis. You brought her in within the window where we could correct it without consequence. Saskia told her about Lichen, about the face pressed to the child's mouth, about the scratching at the side garage entry, about the impact at 3:29 in the morning. The doctor wrote something on the chart and set her pen down. Dogs detect metabolic slowdown signature at concentrations thousands of times below human sensory threshold, she said. In a child whose condition is shifting across hours, that signature is changing. He has been reading a chemical profile that is invisible to anyone in your house. He was telling you. You filed it as aggression because you have a framework for aggression. You do not have a framework for what he was actually doing. Another 9 minutes and we would be having a very different conversation. Saskia sat with that for a long time. The face pressed to Yara's mouth each morning. Not aggression. Breath detection. The refusal to leave after every correction. Not defiance. An alarm that could not turn itself off. The scratch at the side garage entry. Not impatience. The sound of him trying to get back to his post. The vigil at the threshold over the sleeping child. Not dominance. Medical surveillance. The impact at 3:29. Not destruction. A guardian locked outside by the person he was trying to protect. He had been reading what she could not see since the moment Yara woke fussy that morning. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense, until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. They drove home in the dark. Yara was stable, drowsy, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Peter carried her inside. Saskia opened the side garage entry. Lichen came in without drama. He walked through the den, past the burp cloth, past the knit teether on the engineered oak, and crossed to where Peter had set Yara down. He lay close beside her, the full length of his body against her side. Saskia sat on the engineered oak across from them. She did not reach for her phone. She did not move to the den. She watched the slow rise and fall of her child's chest. She watched Lichen's ribs rise and fall in time with it. She watched the place on his shoulder where the wood of the bedroom door had left a faint mark from the impact at 3:29. She did not say anything aloud. She said one thing in her head, the same thing over and over, the only thing that made sense to say. "I'm sorry, Lichen." He did not move for a moment. Then he pushed his nose against her hand and settled again beside the sleeping child. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. She stayed on the engineered oak until the morning began to gray in the window. She watched the infant scale blink its small green light at slow intervals. She listened for the breath that, the night before, had almost stopped without anyone in the house, except Lichen understanding what it meant. Yara is wearing a continuous monitor now. Her numbers are stable. Most nights the monitor does its job. Every night Lichen lies at the foot of her bed anyway, because the numbers can change and he is still watching. He has not stopped watching once in all the months since. There is a thing she thinks about often now, sitting alone in the kitchen in the early hour before the rest of the house wakes. The framework she had built, across 16 years of professional training, was real. It was earned. It was, in its own context, correct. But it had been built from the cases she had seen. It had been blind, by its nature, to the cases she had never been in the room for. Lichen had been working from a different framework, a framework that had nothing to do with anything she had been taught. A framework that began at the level of a single molecule and ended at the foot of a sleeping child. She had treated his framework like noise. He had treated hers like a danger. Only one of them had been correct. She has not written about it. She does not know how. The cases she has filed across her career are organized by category, indexed by symptom, ordered by diagnostic clarity. There is no field on the form for the thing Lichen did. There is no category for the kind of attention he was paying. There is no symptom that captures the sound of a hollow core door under the shoulder of a great Pyrenees who had figured out, before any of them, that the small body on the other side of the door was running out of time. She thinks she will figure out how to write it eventually. For now, she only sits with the knowledge that, on the night it mattered most, the only competent professional in the house had been the one without a badge. The next story involves a dog who changed his behavior 3 weeks before a diagnosis. No one saw coming. Lichen lay beside the sleeping child, his ears flicking once, twice, then settling, his eyes still on the sleeping child.